They erased him the way one rubs out an unfortunate blot of ink, meticulously, forcefully, until not a trace remains. Photographs vanished from the thick family albums as though they had never existed at all. His name became a kind of forbidden incantation, something one simply did not speak. In the royal archives, he turned into an empty space, a shadow between the lines. No chronicler wrote of him, no courtier dared recall him, only hushed whispers survived behind closed doors. He was the son of a king, and at the same time a man from whom the crown itself averted its gaze. Why did the British royal family do everything in its power to excise him from its own history? What dark, inconvenient truth lies hidden behind this silence that has stretched on for decades?
He was the sixth child in the family, the youngest son of King George V and Queen Mary, the brother of two future monarchs, Edward VIII and George VI. By every measure, his fate should have been comfortable and predictable: honor, privilege, a measured life at court. But something went awry. His life slowly drifted off its royal course, and at some point, even his own family began to behave as though he were a stranger. Prince John was born in 1905. At that time, nothing foreshadowed trouble. He was an ordinary royal infant, smiling in photographs, wrapped in lace, surrounded by care. No one saw a threat in him. No one anticipated tragedy. But as he approached 5 years of age, it became clear that something strange was happening to the boy. At times, he laughed too loudly and out of place, raced through the corridors as if fevered, ignoring every call. At other moments, he fell still, withdrew into himself, sat silently in a corner as though noticing no one. He spoke in fragments, in scattered pieces. His thoughts did not always form coherent sentences. Sometimes he seemed to lose his connection to the world around him. And then the seizures began. Doctors, constrained by the limited understanding of the early 20th century, made a diagnosis that at the time sounded almost like a sentence: epilepsy, a disease that inspired fear, superstition, and shame, an illness that did not fit the image of health, vigor, and brilliance expected of a royal dynasty. From that moment on, John was hidden. At first, gently, seemingly out of concern, then farther and farther away, until he disappeared. Perhaps the most astonishing part of this story is the cold swiftness with which John was pushed aside the moment it became clear something was wrong. At first, they simply stopped taking him to official events. Then he vanished from family portraits, and soon he disappeared from public life altogether, as though his existence had become something inappropriate, an awkward detail more easily removed than explained. He did not fit. He did not match the image. He did not align with the painstakingly polished facade of the royal family, guarded almost as a sacred relic, gleaming, strong, immaculate. And so they removed him, simply because he fell ill. The final years of his short life were spent on the Sandringham estate, a country residence to which he was sent far from prying eyes, far from the noise of the capital, far from attention. The place where he lived hardly resembled a home. It felt more like an isolated institution with a well-kept garden where everything was quiet, orderly, and under control. No brothers or sisters nearby. His parents visited rarely. Later, historians would suggest that John may have suffered not only from severe forms of epilepsy, but also from signs of autism. But in the early 20th century, such conditions had no names. They were neither understood nor studied. They were hidden. And so it happened that a boy born at the very center of the monarchy ended up at its edge, forgotten not by the world, but by his own family. What is especially striking is how few traces John left in the private writings of his mother, Queen Mary. This was a woman renowned for her pedantry. Her diaries, letters, catalogues of possessions, all maintained with almost maniacal precision. For her, order was a form of control, and system was her habitual form of affection. And precisely for that reason, her silence about her youngest son feels particularly deafening. One would think that for any mother, each child is a universe unto itself, a precious part of her own being. But in John's case, almost nothing. Only rare, detached mentions, as though from the very beginning an invisible taboo lay upon him. Not malicious, not cruel, but painfully awkward. Within that silence, perhaps, lived a delicate and tormenting struggle of emotions, shame, anxiety, and inner fracture between maternal attachment and the pressure of royal duty. Perhaps she simply could not cope with the thought that her son, born at the heart of an empire, in the very center of ritual and symbols of power, did not meet the harsh standard she herself lived under. For her other children, she had lines, even, neat, orderly, like everything in her life. But for John, there were no words. Or perhaps the words existed, but were never written. And yet, for all the sorrow in this story, it is not without light. In John's life there was one person who did not turn away, did not fear him, did not try to reshape him into someone else's expectations. His nurse, Charlotte Bill, better known as Lalla. To him she was not merely a nurse, but an entire world, the one presence that was truly warm and steadfast. In her company, John became someone else, calmer, freer, more alive. He never found a bond with his brothers. Within the family, he felt like an outsider. But beside Lalla, he could simply be himself. She did not demand that he fit a mold. She understood, accepted, and supported him as best she could. People say that it was thanks to her that John developed, however small, yet profoundly important, a sense of his own self, the feeling that he was not merely a burden, not a mistake, but a human being worthy of love. While others appeared in Sandringham less and less frequently, Lalla remained by his side every day. She walked with him through the garden, watched over his health, staged little performances, pointed out birds, told stories, sought out even the tiniest fragments of joy within the days allotted to him. To John, she was not simply a companion. She was home, quiet, living, genuine, the home he lacked so painfully within his own family. In January of 1919, far from palace bustle, newspaper headlines, and political storms, an event occurred that almost no one noticed. There, at Woodhouse, a modest dwelling hidden among trees and the winter mists of eastern England, a 13-year-old boy died, a boy who had once been called a prince. Death came swiftly. One of the epileptic seizures that had accompanied him in his final years proved fatal. This time, his body could not withstand it. It happened at night. In the room, there was only one figure, the one who had stayed with him until the very end, Charlotte Bill, Lalla. She held his hand when everything was over. His parents, King George V and Queen Mary, did not come. They did not see their son one last time. Officially, it was said they wished to avoid overwhelming emotions, but in that decision, there was something far deeper than the reserve of the era or the stiffness of court etiquette. There was a kind of profound, almost icy detachment, as though in John's death, just as in his life, they tried to see as little as possible. And so he left, quietly, without farewell words, without royal rites, alone beyond the radiance to which he had once held every right. After John's death, it was Lala's letters that became the chief key to understanding the hidden life that unfolded behind the walls of the royal residence. In her notes, she described him as a child of remarkable sensitivity and kindness, yet deeply lonely. She recalled his smile, rare but genuine, appearing only when he felt safe. In her letters, one hears the joy he found in the simplest things, watching animals, the soft rustling of leaves, the gentle sounds of music. These lines reveal not only the image of a prince the world preferred not to notice, but also the tender bond between two solitary souls, a boy and his devoted nurse. Her words about John's death, "He went peacefully. I believe it was a release. But how unbearably hard it is to lose someone you love with all your heart." After the prince's passing, Lala was left hollowed out. For her, John had not been merely a charge, he had become part of her very soul. But the royal family, as though shaking off an inconvenient burden, offered only a chilly thank you and dismissed her at once. Lala was expelled from palace life, as though she were not a loyal caregiver, but the bearer of some unseemly secret. Her later years unfolded in obscurity, in the shadow of the very walls where once echoed the laughter of the boy they so eagerly sought to forget. But she carried the memory of John, like an unhealed wound, to her last breath. In official documents and chronicles, John received only a few dry lines, devoid of respect or warmth. His name was almost erased from history. In the records, he was granted only a handful of words, without pathos, without ceremony. His name scarcely appeared in obituaries. He was not remembered as a member of the ruling dynasty, nor honored in formal speeches. He was buried on a modest plot beside the Church of St. Mary Magdalene at Sandringham. The inscription on his gravestone was simple and quiet: John Charles Francis, a loving son of the King and Queen. This restrained epitaph, set among grand monarchical mausoleums, reads almost like an unspoken apology, soft, faint, left in the far corner of history.